Welcome back to another episode of Detonation, where we're putting death out of business. All right, so we're here on the campaign trail with the Benzion 2020 campaign. They're all looking kind of funny because Skype's kind of doing its thing. But yeah, it's all smiles from Washington, D.C. All right, so Benzion and Dr. Dan, you wanted to talk about the Futurist New Deal for America and how it fits into AI policy. I just came off a show yesterday with David Kelly, and he said that, quote unquote, this is the best I could get out of him, that Benzion is a quote unquote good boy, which is for me an endorsement from David Kelly, because you know how David Kelly is sometimes. But no, he's good. So firstly, Ben, we know how you are. You're doing fantastic. You're off to see Andrew Yang. You're running around with the climate people. You're pulling them into the party. We're coming up with campaign strategies of how to to launch this into a really special way. But Dr. Dan, how are you? How are you being treated? How are you?
I'm doing well. We've had some cold weather here, so I think it's been feeling a bit under the weather, but I haven't gotten sick, so that's good. I'm going to be hosting Benzion tomorrow at a meetup in Arlington, Virginia, at the Arlington Central Library, and I think this is going to be a major event in the campaign. We're going to be filming this, and I think it's going to be where Benzion will lay out the core tenets of the campaign in a systematic way for the first time, and this is going to sort of be a demonstration of the kind of campaigning speeches and presentations that Ben may be doing in the future.
Oh, yes.
And so we're preparing for that. And then on Sunday, Ben's going to be doing a Q&A session in D.C. And we're also going to be going to a Stand Up for Nuclear protest outside the White House, standing up for investing in nuclear power and alternatives like thorium power and fusion. So that's going to be pretty cool.
Very exciting.
And then we have a full slate of engagements for on Tuesday and Wednesday as well. Wednesday we're going to an event at the Cato Institute on space policy. So we're gonna hopefully wine and dine with some of the Washington elite and advertise the Futurist New Deal. So that's going to be fun.
Yes.
And then the adventure continues.
Yes. Oh, and all of these approaches in messaging for the Futurist New Deal and getting the word out about the United States Transhumanist-Party. At the center of them is thinking about algorithms. This is the glue that holds these techno-progressive disciplines together. There's no 21st century society without advanced algorithms. Let's not kid ourselves. And this is why I'm very pleased to be working with Dr. Dan. I'm proud to announce that he's agreed to be the AI advisor to the Futurist New Deal for America. And that is why we're here today to discuss how to best construct these policy initiatives that will facilitate development in all of these other disciplines that will allow us to be doing, as a society and within this organization, the best sort of work that we can be doing. And there's no overstating the importance of artificial intelligence to that undertaking. So thank you, Dr. Dan, for agreeing to do that. I'm very excited to be working so closely with you.
Yeah, as Andrew Ng says, the data is the new oil and AI is the new electricity, right? So I've put together some brief policy points that cover 4 areas of AI policy. So I kind of have these in inverse order of importance. So going from what I consider to be the lower importance to the higher importance. So the first area is dealing with mass unemployment from automation and AI. Somewhat controversial how bad that problem is going to be, but with the rapid advancements of AI, a lot of knowledge workers and a lot of people who have jobs are going to see those jobs automated away. So that's the first. The first area is mass unemployment from automation. Second area of policy concern is lethal autonomous weapons and the threat of a global AI arms race. We've talked about that before. Third area is national competitiveness. I just read the book AI Superpowers.
I've been reading it too.
And Kai-Fu Lee, he makes a very convincing case that China is going to surpass the West very, very soon in AI and deep learning. And we don't want to cede the future of the global economy to the Chinese Communist Party. So national competitiveness is, of course, important. And then the fourth area, fourth area is what I consider to be the most important, which is AI safety. And safety, that includes both safety of short-term, near-term systems, such as perhaps those of subhuman intelligence, such as home robots or driverless cars. And also, just as importantly, thinking about safety of highly advanced systems like superintelligence systems, and how we may, how it would be possible to align those with human interest. So those are the four big areas of policy that need to be addressed, and that we are addressing in the Futurist New Deal platform. So happy to jump into any of those. I guess the one I've been thinking about the most lately is the AI safety. That's the one I consider the most important because of the long-term risks. But all of these are important areas for discussion.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you for doing so much work on preparing that for the Futurist New Deal.
Yes.
It's all super important stuff. Firstly, it's really good to thank you for helping out, Ben, and and going to all these functions and events and doing all this, because this is about getting the message out there. It's about it's about taking the transhumanist party to the next level. That's what we're all trying to do. We want to get the message out there. We want to formalize this. We want to bring people in. We want to grow the party. We want to push the message, and we want to stay on top and compete against these other parties, smaller parties, larger parties. We want to, we already have better ideas than them, so we just don't have the resources that they do to nationalize the voice. So thank you very much for assisting in this. And AI is absolutely at the core. Ben just raised an important point in our last conversation with Mr. Yelishvili, that Ray Kurzweil at Radfest was talking about AI being at the very core of some of these solutions to some of these global problems, because of the efficiency metrics that are built into them. The first one on your list, Dr. Well, firstly, Ben Zion, during your campaign, you said that the Futurist New Deal, although, a fairly well-rounded policy, it had flexibilities in there. It was ready to evolve and had more, there's a morphological freedom built into that Futurist New Deal, and you've embraced that. So you've delivered on some of your campaign promises already, and I think what you're doing this now, is that correct? You're delivering on some of those campaign promises?
Yes. Well, we want to make sure that we are positioning the United States Transhumanist Party to be most effective, and messaging in ways that will allow us to reach a lot of folks and to get these ideas out there. And so that requires some flexibility in how we are approaching these main policy points in the Futurist New Deal. And we're already seeing this in this discussion that we just had moments ago with Daniel Yelishvili, having a larger role in the discussion for climate science and geoengineering, and all of these matters are of extremely high importance. But we want to make sure that we're using the tools at our disposal in the best way possible. And again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but thinking about algorithms is really at the center of all of that. It is this thing that, as you mentioned, Andrew Ng, pointing out that data is. It is a commodity unlike anything we've ever seen, and it drives all of these other facets of the marketplace in our civil society.
So, Dr. Dan, your first thing on your list of least importance, what was that?
Well, it's the mass unemployment from automation and AI.
Would you like to speak on that? Yeah, let's talk about mass unemployment because.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, the main way we can address this with policy is by reforming our social programs to make them more efficient and providing and the main way to do that is the universal basic income or negative income tax, which gives people money and allows them to spend that as is best for them, to allow them to pursue things such as skills retraining or just to make sure they can meet their basic needs after they've suffered a job loss.
Yes.
And now some people think that the job loss concerns are a little bit overblown, and they point to previous technological advances, such as the demise of the replacement of horse-drawn carriages with motor vehicles. And of course, going back further, the automated weaving machines in textiles. But Andrew Yang and Kai-Fu Lee and others think that this new wave of AI technology is going to be different in sort of two ways. I think the first way is the pace of change is going to be a lot faster than previous economic transformations. We're talking about a huge job loss in just the next decade, whereas previous technological advances were not disseminated until many decades. I think part of that's because AI is easily copied, right? With something like automobiles, you have to manufacture them. You have to disseminate them. New advances in AI are quickly disseminated over the internet, and the pace of progress is just incredibly fast. So one of the main differences is going to be this pace of progress. The other difference, I'm trying to recall, the other difference is that the types of jobs that are so in the past,
is it
the jobs that were replaced were
pay? Is it because they're low skilled jobs that are going to get
Yeah,
replaced?
so the idea was that the other thing is in the past, the job losses have been mostly low-skilled jobs. And so people who worked in textile industry, they ended up working somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
But now what's going to happen is that the only remaining jobs are going to be the high skilled jobs are going to be lost. So right.
Attorneys. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the white collar.
I can't remember the exact argument, but
gone.
the types of jobs that are going to be lost are quite a bit different, and that's going to make it more challenging.
Yeah. And it's true. 55% of people in this country are working in service jobs that are not regarded as the most glamorous of jobs. Certainly not compensated in this regard, in that way. But those people are earning artificially low wages, and they have artificially high housing costs. And those people's jobs are going to be automated out of existence. Around the same time, we'll see many attorneys, certainly, and other white collar professionals having, as Dan mentioned, having their jobs automated out of existence. We'll also be seeing truck drivers, which in some states this is the number one form of employment, is working as a truck driver. This is already being automated out of existence, or changing the nature of this work. And in changing the nature of these kinds of work, that tends to mean a lot less work for people. So this is something that we must seriously consider. It's why we've had so many interesting discussions about a negative income tax, about basic income, which is a feature of the Futurist New Deal, about even a federal jobs guarantee, which is being posited, which is being promoted by some candidates in the Democratic Party in their ongoing primary. And all of these things are things that we must discuss. What we cannot do is ignore this issue because this job loss, even if it is only a few years, it has the potential to create civil unrest, out-and-out chaos. It's maybe not an existential risk that ranks as high as some of these in the long term, but it's an existential risk to a nation state if its workforce becomes unstable and folks are not able to live well.
And obviously, this will increase inequality and class division as well, which could lead to mass kind of political revolts and chaos.
Yes. And our federal land dividend that was first described and promoted in the campaign by Zoltan Istvan in 2015, 2016, and again in his governor's race in California in 2018. This set of undertakings, it is funded by these novel revenue streams, generating $173 trillion over the course of 10 years, a number that would fund a middle-class basic income for 18 to 63-year-olds. And but even if it were not, some of the kinds described by Yang or formerly described by Rachel Haywire, these the way that it would affect the economy, it's, we had a financial crisis, a housing crisis in 2009, when we had $1 trillion plus in quantitative easing at that time, which was basically so that folks in Bel Air wouldn't lose too much value in their nice second and third homes. And the flip side of that is that those artificially high housing costs were maintained. But I digress. The point being that this quantitative easing, it did not undermine the economy, did not crash the economy, and the federal land dividend has not this prospect at all. So it's something that we must do, things of this kind, and the federal land dividend is at the top of my list. It's as an approach to dealing with these near-term uncertainties in income inequality and instability.
All right, very cool.
And we should note we are exploring other funding mechanisms. We talked with Ed Hudgens yesterday, and he pointed out that
it was the day
or 2 days ago, the estimate of the amount of money you could get from the land dividend doesn't necessarily take into account the elasticity of the market. So if you flood the market with land, the value of that land is going to go down.
It's not the hardest thing to control for.
Right, but we are open to other funding mechanisms as well.
Yes.
What was the next thing on your list there, Dr. Dan?
Okay, well, the lethal autonomous weapons. I'm not sure we need to go into that again, but that's a major thing.
What are you doing to incorporate that into the Futurist New Deal? We don't have to go into it, but what's it got to do with the context of the Futurist New Deal?
Well, we're going to be, I think, pushing for an international treaty to halt research on lethal autonomous weapons, fully autonomous weapons.
Yeah, I've spoken in support of this, and the Futurist New Deal is in favor of this international ban on killer robots, autonomous.
And then the other thing is the sub problem of so the one problem is the AI arms race, which I think we can help thwart with some kind of treaties. The other problem is that highly advanced AI weaponry such as drones, etc., could fall into the wrong hands, such as terrorist organizations. And for that, one possible solution is investing in research on countermeasures. So, for instance, we need more research into countermeasures on drone attacks. And also research into security of such weapon systems, cybersecurity.
Yes.
So those are the two policy planning points we have on that.
And just as we mentioned, there's instability that derives from previous concern. There's instability at a transnational level that derives from not fully addressing and engaging the other nations and institutions in this matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And would you class autonomous weapons as an existential risk?
I would classify them as they are a concern from a AI safety perspective, because if you're in an arms race, you're sort of trying to always stay ahead of your opponent and move as quickly as possible, so you may not focus so much on safety. That's a concern, is that these defense departments are not going to be doing due diligence on safety. And then, of course, theoretically, in the far future, you could have some kind of Skynet-like scenario, which could, in fact, lead to rogue AI basically taking over the globe and just exterminating humans as a side effect. But I think people who thought about existential risk from AI, they're not concerned about that so much. They're concerned more about AGI in general, not specifically the military. It seems like the most advanced systems right now are actually in the private sector, and probably that will continue to be the case. If we have AGI, my guess is it would come from the private sector. But on the other hand, a lot of the programs are so classified, it's hard for us to tell how advanced the military AI is. It's just my sense is that the top talent is more in the private sector. But yeah, we have to keep an eye on the threat of unaligned or unsafe AGI merging in both in either defense departments.
Is there any correlation or anything comparable to the nuclear arms race of the 50s, 60s, and 70s?
Oh yeah,
I think it's directly comparable. Yeah, I mean, Russia. If you look at what Russia's doing, they're actually have a humanoid robot soldier they've demoed.
Hmm.
They're working on autonomous fighter jets, which can maneuver at much higher accelerations than a human could ever tolerate. So highly maneuverable fighter jets. They're working on autonomous submarines, I believe. So, yeah, I think it's very comparable. I think Putin actually said that those who master AI will master the military, something like that. I can't remember exactly what he said.
Rule the
Yeah.
world.
But
I think
they're
we
very
want that.
they're very unabashed about what they're doing. And also, of course, AI is sort of a weapon of mass destruction. If you have you can have 1,000,000 drones controlled by a single person.
Yeah.
So
Yes, and that is a very real concern. I don't necessarily class killer robots and autonomous weaponry as a full-fledged existential risk, but in indirect ways it could contribute to an instability that would be equally concerning. And we do want to understand and temper this AI weaponry arms race in every way that we possibly can. This is risky stuff.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And it's a job for an international organization. It's a job for a treaty. It's a treaty. It's a job for governments to enforce the laws on their own private corporations and the private sector in general to, stop the proliferation of some of these deadly AI and AI innovations that are going on for the sake of, you could let Pandora out of the box, and that's not much fun. Especially if you
and
lose
also it's just enormous waste of money being stuck in an arms race.
Yep.
Having to devote trillions of dollars to military buildup when that could be invested elsewhere. So
Yeah.
and it
it's
goes directly
ultimately in the
against
best interest of the major players to have some sort of a moratorium, I think, on before things get too out of hand.
Yeah, it is another huge money pit that doesn't serve human development. We need to move from a military-industrial complex.
And another thing is, I just read Zoltan Isfan's book. He thinks we should also be pushing for nuclear disarmament. And if you look at the USTP policy plank platform, it calls for working towards total disarmament. And Zoltan says that is important because if we have runaway AI,
Right.
we don't want nukes to be out there.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
That's the main
If we
reason.
runaway
because-
military AI that goes out of control, we might
need
as
to
well just
preempt the dangers of this black
the
box.
best thing we can do to to exercise precaution is just remove the nuclear arms now.
Yeah, I read that piece also.
And
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, prevent them from falling into the hands of runaway or rogue AI.
Yes. Yeah, there's we can err on the side of caution in this, but this has been said of nuclear weapons in some form or another for many decades that we aren't going to be able to handle it. And the theory of mutually assured destruction seemed rather mad to a lot of folks, and yet it's proven true. But we're at a different point in history in the early 21st century now, where we have some of the things that Dr. Dan mentioned, Moore's law effects and exponential growth effects in computing power. That's in this that's creating these black box effects. We can't have artificial superintelligence that is in control of such powerful weaponry. We have to be very careful in how we how we enfranchise those kinds of forces.
Yeah, just got to get the message out there that the USTP has the solutions to these 21st century problems. Dr. Dan, what was the next thing on your list?
Yes.
Well, the next thing was basically the national competitiveness, and that is where we need to be investing in our talent, our workforce, and allowing highly skilled immigration, so we can maintain competitiveness, primarily against China. The thesis of Kai-Fu Lee's book is that there's going to be sort of a bipolar world order. It's going to be the U.S. and China essentially leading AI.
Yeah.
And maybe you could lump, some of the more developed countries in with the U.S., like UK and Australia, just to be fair. But essentially, those two powers are well positioned right now to dominate, especially in this near-term era where big data is important. Right now, with the current deep learning, it requires big data, and the only countries that have that is really the U.S. Corporations and the Chinese government and Chinese corporations.
Yeah, and they're the only two countries that have the mechanisms for accumulating that data across transnational. Transcontinental sort of
yeah, I mean, we're in a good position here in the U.S. Obviously, with our free market is an engine of innovation, and we also have the best, a lot of the best academics. A lot of the founding fathers of AI are here at our universities. But Kai-Fu Lee argues that actually is not going to be such an asset because of the open culture of AI research. The innovations that come out of the top universities will be quickly disseminated. And he notes that the Chinese have a very large number of highly skilled engineers. They may not be, top visionaries who are going to be developing new AI algorithms, but they're highly intelligent, highly skilled, and they read all of the literature that comes out of academia, and they quickly figure out how to implement it and make a buck with it. They're very entrepreneurial. They're very competitive. They're not afraid to. Another thing Kai-Fu Lee notes is they're not afraid to copy. We view copying as sort of a sign of weakness or something that's shameful here, but they'll copy anything. And so he notes, like, here in the U.S. we had Groupon, right, and then nobody wanted to copy it. In China, he said they had literally 1,000 Groupons they copied the concept 1,000 times. And then all those 1,000 companies competed in a cutthroat competition. And so in a way that actually leads to more, that their willingness to copy actually leads to more competition and better products that are more tailored to the Chinese consumer. So he views it as almost somewhat an advantage they have. Anyway,
that's so interesting.
The point is, we can't rest on our laurels here. We have to invest in education, and also, honestly, I think intellectual property protections, because the Chinese are stealing a lot of our data and code right now from major corporations, and I personally think that's a problem.
Yeah. And the enforcing of international law is always a tricky matter.
Yeah, but it's a tough one.
But and we also want to do what, as a society, what the Chinese people do. In Kai-Fu Lee's book, he talks about how, in the wake of the AlphaGo defeat of the Go champion, the tens of millions of Chinese people effectively became citizen computer scientists, doing precisely what you're saying. They're not coming out of the top tier institutions, but they're doing the top tier work. And they're joining that in an excited way. And the United States doesn't have that culture of interest in computer science, and we really need to encourage people to take a stronger interest in there.
Yeah, really interesting. Really, really good. National competitives. Yeah, absolutely. And if the U.S. Transhumanist-Party wants to, it's transnational, but at the same time, it's USA is in the name. So that's where its home is, and you're trying to run for the office of the President of the United States, and which would mean a constitutional oath to follow through on the Constitution and the embedded practices of the president, which is looking after the American people, right? So so there's nothing antithetical there. It's a political party, So that's all good from what I can hear. Yeah, and there's some serious problems to face and to be challenged to face, especially from China. But at the same time, there's lots to learn, and I don't agree that stealing code and stealing other people's work is a good thing. But if they can get away with it, I mean, all the more power. I mean, I don't think it's a good thing, but it's just what they're doing. So, yeah.
Well, it's the main concern is the Chinese Communist Party in particular. I mean, I think intellectual property laws are a little bit silly. I think sometimes they ideas should be set free. Sometimes not. But that's a whole other
information wants
debate.
To be free.
But the concerning thing here is really the Chinese Communist Party, which is really cementing power and setting up what essentially is a turnkey totalitarian state. And they are engaging in several human rights violations right now with the Uyghur, what are they called? The Uyghurs, the basic, yes. And then also the people who practice
Falun Gong?
Falun Gong are just there's a number of human rights abuses going on right now. And I think there's a potential it could get a lot worse with the system of control they're setting up, which can essentially monitor the entire populace using mass surveillance and easily shut off people's benefits and everything. It's pretty scary actually. And then of course they're very good at censorship and manipulation of the media. So it's a very scary system they're setting up, and if it should fall into the wrong hands, it could be a very scary scenario.
Yeah, we have to consider the implications of these institutions, and there's because the mechanisms for social engineering as we move into AI takeoff will become far more complex, far more pervasive. So we have to be gaming this out and considering what these things look like and how what best practices should be on the part of nation states and institutions in doing this. But I want to say that we must also remember that this AI takeoff consideration, it's a good problem to have. What it is, most fundamentally, it's an enormous glut, an enormous influx of man hours that are free. These things, say algorithms want to be free. They can be endlessly replicated, and to that end, these kinds of things are a tremendous resource the world has never seen, and that should be the at the center of any of these discussions, that we are moving into a world of tremendous potential and providence. But in all of our thinking, we should be thinking about how to best use those resources, how to best plan for these other concerns, and how to live with one another in harmony and stability.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really interesting. What was the next thing on the list of today?
Well, last area is AI safety, and that includes both the near-term safety, such as cybersecurity and uh, ensuring robustness of algorithms, and the long-term concern, which is the risk of runaway AI, the type of risk that Nick Bostrom has written about at length. In the near term, we have to make sure AI algorithms are robust, which means they can adapt to changing environments. Right now, these deep learning models can't deal with changes in their data that were not present in the data they were trained on. So, for instance, in my field with medical imaging, something as simple as the presence of some kind of implant in the body can really screw up these detection algorithms, detection models, if the implant was not something that they saw before in the training data. So, and furthermore, these models can often be very confident in their predictions. So, even if they're wildly off. So we need to incorporate some notion of uncertainty, some notion of confidence prediction, and then also learn how to better make these algorithms more robust to changes, and also make them robust to attacks. Right now, there it is possible to develop what are called adversarial attacks to deep learning systems, which are where you can say, if you have, say, a system that classifies cats and dogs, you can add, there are ways of adding slight amounts of noise into the image that it would be imperceptible to a human, but that noise, that tailored noise, is enough to throw off
Misidentified.
and current systems, and cause them to misidentify things. And that's especially a concern with the driverless cars, because it means that with the current technology, at least, it may be easy for nefarious individuals to really screw around with these driverless cars. Something as simple as putting a small marks on a road sign could really screw up a driverless car, even though it wouldn't interfere with the human's judgment. So that's the kind of thing a lot of people are worried about. There's a lot of work going into that, and I think we need to be investing in that. I think a lot of companies are, of course, investing in that, but we should also be investing in that in our publicly funded research institutions.
And
yeah.
And it's important that we find ways to mitigate these existential risks from bad actors, but we also need to look at higher probability events that other institutions may be undertaking, and how to mitigate risks from those. Now, an example would be the conversation that we had in the previous talk, where we talked about using an iron to catalyze algal blooms in the ocean. This is something that could be very helpful in dealing with the climate crisis, but it also we don't know for certain that it wouldn't be also, in fact, quite hurtful. Ray Kurzweil, in his presentation at RADFest that we were lucky enough to see, what he described this set of predictive algorithms and more advanced modeling on the part of AI that would allow us to determine best practices for undertakings of this kind, to make sure that we're not just screwing the dog when we roll these things out.
Yeah. the people who are interested in this can read this paper, which is called Concrete Problems in AI Safety. It's all about near-term problems. There's a lot of unsolved problems right now. Like a simple one is like avoiding side effects. So if you tell a robot to clean the kitchen, you probably didn't mean throwing the cat into the trash can or something like that. So the simple stuff like that is still largely unsolved, and that is necessary to solve all those technical problems to get to the kind of future we want with robots and
AI safety. From what I can hear in these short-term AI safety problems is the AI is not very concerned or doesn't have very much capacity for creative thinking. It's directed, it's given an order, and it tries to maximize that order, and it's the paperclip hypothesis. But that's the real issue. And I mean, the stuff about misidentifying a cat and a dog in a photo, and there's being lots of noise, those are learning problems, algorithm problems, and I'm sure that those just require trillions of hours of more data and more learning and more input of things. And that's it's good with driverless cars on that side are going to be quite good, because let's say instantly they plugged into every single car around the world, suddenly it gets to learn all around the world simultaneously, trillions of hours of driving added up over all different road conditions, over over huge spans of time, all different conditions and stuff. So that's good in that way, but that's only one system and that's one hypothesis. So, and there will be lots of road bumps along the way on that. But yeah, parameters and creative thinking. With this kitchen analogy, don't throw the cat in the trash, as you Americans would say. It's kind of an interesting one because, what is the definition of a clean kitchen? And that's what it doesn't really know. And you take that analogy out, and it becomes very complicated for an AI very fast. So yeah, I can kind of see how I don't see it as a perpetual problem. I think there's a lot of smart people out there, and I see them overcoming some of those short-term problems. I mean, the creative element is probably hard to master, but it's not impossible, because with each certain scenario, let's take a cleaning gadget. I mean, the cleaning robots that exist now, they're limited by, they vacuum your floor, and they're limited by their own design. I mean, they move around, they hit the edge of a carpet, they know they can't go over there because the sensor tells them not to, and they bump into something, it must be... So they have their own limited directional focus, and I think if you scale that up, it might end up being that until we do get creative AI, especially in home products and other things, I mean, that it might just mean that the gadgets will have to suit the purpose of that need until we hit an AGI or something that can actually think creatively.
Yeah,
and clean the kitchen.
I mean, it'll probably be narrow AI for the next few decades of ever increasing sophistication.
Yeah. So
you have cleaning robots that are really good at cleaning. You have driverless cars that are really good at driving. You may have, cooking robots. That
narrow AI 2.0, because we've lived through the narrow AI 1.0.
Yeah.
And it's 2.0 that's harder, but it's not. There's not much difference between an AGI and a super AGI, in my opinion. There's something missing right now to get to general intelligence. Some people think it's the ability to transfer things you learned in one area to another area. Some people think it's
sense of the robots. AI needs a better sense of causality. Current systems don't really understand causality, and also unsupervised learning. We talked about that before. Learning just from sensory experience, learning on your own rather than having tons of labeled training examples. That's sort of what kids do. Kids don't look at a million pictures of things to labeled examples of things. They kind of learn on their own. So anyway, I think that we need to be investing in these things. I do feel fairly optimistic that that the private sector will be working on these, because of course it's in the interest of business to have systems that are safe and don't cause negative side effects. But the bigger concern is the super intelligent AI, which is going to be almost impossible for us to understand just by the nature of being manyfold more intelligent than any given human. And we don't have a good idea of how to specify human values into such a system. And that is a major concern. So I think we need more organizations like MIRI, the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, or Future of Humanity Institute, working on these problems.
Yeah.
Another one is the Berkeley, the Center for Human Compatible AI at Berkeley, or it's at Stanford Center for Human Compatible AI.
What a great name.
That's run by Stuart Russell. So we need to be investing in that sort of thing, I think.
Yes.
And I'm fairly optimistic about it, but it's a very challenging problem. We don't know how long it's going to take to solve, so we should put a lot of effort into it.
Yeah, I agree. Ben Zion, so you're absorbing some of these into the Futurist New Deal now. How are you going to take this to the public and use this as part of your campaign mechanism? Dr. Dan's giving you some great ammunition, some great resources here. And it's something that you want to actively fix. What are you going to do? How are you going to hit the road and take this out to the public?
Yes. Well, we're going to continue our focus on how these tremendous leaps in advanced algorithms can be used in terms of creating greater e-governance. This is an e-governance ticket, and we want to create e-services that allow people to make better use of these things. But in looking, as folks look at the policy points of the Futurist New Deal, there's every one of these can be positively affected by more advanced algorithms, and every feature of our civil society, therefore. And we don't necessarily need to see a truly plastic, versatile superintelligence to be seeing those effects. In fact, from a socio-political point of view, it doesn't matter that much whether a superintelligence is truly autonomous, or whether we have these multiple narrow superintelligent features that are being controlled by humans. It doesn't much matter if the tail is wagging the dog or the dog is moving about on its own. If there's a big dog running around, that's the main story. This has tremendous implications for our society. And but I think that it remains an open question, to be perfectly frank, how we want to be messaging AI safety and best practices for advanced algorithms.
Nick Bostrom points out we don't want to be giving AI too much of a negative image, because there are enormous benefits that we're going to reap from AI, such as discovering new medicines, improving healthcare, curing cancer. So we have to be careful about our PR here.
Yes.
That's a really good point. That's a really good
Right.
point. We can't be on the AI scaremongering campaign because at the other edge of this, you got to balance your longevity goals. Mr. Charlie Cam is right up there, and they wouldn't be too happy if you just threw AI out the window, based on hypotheses of it going
and our
wrong.
friend David Kelly.
You have to balance both options. There are benefits and there are negatives, and this is the whole thing that comes around with the U.S. Transhumanist Party. And this is what's the most interesting thing: is technology is neutral. Technology is a tool. It's how we use the tools, and we have to guide. It comes down to people. It always comes down to people. We have to guide people to tell people and show people how to and generate ideas of how to navigate these turbulent waters, because we want to use AI. We want it to benefit our societies. We want to benefit our countries. We want to cure diseases. We want more efficient transport. We want to help save the environment, Mr. Yelishvili. We want to go to space, Mr. Kurtz. We want to do biotech, and we want to have neurological freedom, and we want to help developing countries skip the paradigms. We want to do a lot of stuff. There's a lot to do, but we're gonna need artificial assistance. We're gonna need AI assistance. We're gonna need it, and how do we get rid of these bad actors and some of the bad outcomes? So that's where the USTP comes in and says, hey, we have solutions. We have hypotheses. Let's work together as a human community in order to build out a sustainable future that everybody can live in and that everybody can enjoy. And we don't have to live in this Cold War cloud, whether or not people perceive it or not, because that's definitely what's happening. And Ben, that's what we're all we're all rallying behind you now to frame that message appropriately, and trying to get that message out on a national stage if we can. We're going to try hard.
Yeah, and it's why I like even if it's not fully understood what the use for civilians would be in something like Neuralace technology. I like the messaging there because it's describing a popular excitement around more sophisticated use of interfaces and advanced algorithms, creating a society where people are excited to be participating in this great bounty of computing power. And go. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So this kind of it's why I said in many times in the course of this primary campaign in the Transhumanist Party, which has ended, that I would be happy to be a first civilian, not otherly abled, not physically handicapped person to participate in experiments of this kind with the literal wetware installed, in the case of Neuralace, because I think that we should be willing to put ourselves out there a little bit as an organization to show folks that these are good things to be doing, and how we want to how we want to use that. And so that things of that kind certainly are,
as you're saying, normalizing transhumanism.
Yeah.
So we don't want people stuck in this state of future shock. We want people to start thinking about these ideas. Eliezer Yudkowsky talked about how there's multiple levels of future shock.
Yeah.
And we're used to talking about mind implants and brain implants and uploading and life extension and all this crazy stuff. We talk about this stuff as if it's normal, but to a lot of people, this stuff seems very bizarre and weird and maybe even a little off-putting. What we're trying to do is sort of normalize it, because this is the future that's coming, and we want people to be excited about this technology and thinking about these technologies.
Yeah, detonation, mainstreaming transhumanism. Yeah, let's take it.
Yeah,
let's
I think that's a great tagline for the show.
It is a good one. I think
it captures the essence of the show perfectly.
Yeah. And having these discussions at the center stage, at the center of the public square, about advanced algorithms. It avoids a very real problem if you have AI takeoff, but some of the usages are being driven underground to any degree because of the lack of public interest, because of legislative mishandling. Then then you're left with a situation where you have a great powerful force that's divorced from civil society, but has the potential to also fully overwhelm other institutions. That's not something that we want to do. What we want to do is have these conversations and these technologies be at the center of people's discussions and at the center of how institutions and entities deal with them. So that even if some of those conversations might be in the short term unsettling for people, the people feeling weird is not the same problem as people having an institution that could potentially harm them, as is the case in the former example.
Well, gentlemen,
Right.
I have to I have to run. I have other obligations I have to get to. But thank you so much, Dr. Dan. Thank you for looking after Ben as he's on his Washington leg of the campaign. That's really encouraging. Hopefully, I threw Ben some ideas for a speech. Hopefully, he can talk to you about it, and let's see if we can. I won't put pressure on him here. Just see.
Yeah, we're probably going to be distributing some of the a draft of the slides to the USTP membership for review. So,
Yes, we certainly will.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and I want to just also end by saying thank you again, Dr. Dan, not only for this tremendous effort that you've done, but for agreeing to be this AI advisor. It's a great honor to the Futurist New Deal and an asset. And your work is truly incredible, and I'm humbled that you agreed to do this. Let me shake your hand, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, no,
right.
that's really great news. We're getting a good coalition in, and if you're listening and you're like, hey, I like this. I'm a scientist, or I'm a doctor, or I'm a philosopher, or a PhD, or if I'm a normal guy and I have or girl and I have some great ideas. Join the USTP, send Ben a message, send me a message, come over to Detonation. I'm launching a new website, steelarcher.com, where you'll be able to see all of the work. And because I am going on the street, I will be interviewing people. I'll be doing that as a Detonation side project. It'll be fun. We'll see what's going on with that. But yeah, if you think you have ideas of how to mainstream transhumanism, or help the Ben Zion campaign, or help the USTP, or if you want to donate to a project, go to Project 222, or if you're in Australia, visit Transhumanism Australia. If you're into cognitive freedom, have a look at Talk Spectrum. If you're into fearism and the transdisciplinary stuff, go have a look at TAFs. I mean, this is all positive and good. And we actually have another Mr. Tom Ross, who's coming on board as well to now promote his book on this platform too. So it's another one. The real estate space is filling up. It's going to be just the Detonation and just real estate space, and nothing. You won't be able to see me through all the sponsors soon, but and the collaborators and things. But anyway, no, thank you, Dr. Dan, and thank you, Ben Zion 2020, and we'll keep in contact, and hopefully we have more appointments in this early stage as we rocket to 2020.
Yep.
Great.
Thanks a lot, fellas.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. That's Detonation, putting death out of business. Ben Zion 2020 campaign coming to you from Washington, D.C.